Best verses in Paul's letter to the Romans. We'll read verses 28 to 32. Very familiar verse to begin. Really, all of these verses quite familiar to us, but pray that the Lord will impress their truth and meaning upon us in a fresh way this morning. Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. For those God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the likeness of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those he predestined, he also called. Those he called, he also justified. Those he justified, he also glorified. What then shall we say in response to this? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own Son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? The grass withers and the flowers fade, but this, the word of our God, shall endure forever and ever. Amen. Came across an interesting quote by a man named Eric Hoffer this week. Put the words for this up on the screen so you can read it as well as hear it. Hoffer said, "It is a paradox that in our time of drastic change, when the future is in our midst, we have never been less certain about what is ahead of us." If you share any of Hoffer's uncertainty about what lies ahead for you, I would urge you to listen closely to the message this morning, because it is a message of hope. Of all the profound and moving passages in the Bible, I think this portion of Romans chapter 8, these verses in front of us this morning, have to be some of the very best. We'll focus on verses 31 and 32 this morning. If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own Son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? I think that verse might express the heart of everything that we hope for as followers of Jesus Christ. It is certainly verses that should stir our souls, right, and give us tremendous joy. My friend Bill Brownson, a former broadcast minister of Words of Hope and seminary president, did a lot of things during his ministerial career, once said this about these verses: "I find here in one brief, soaring passage the most comforting conviction ever held, the greatest gift ever given, and the highest hope that our hearts can know." Think about what a comforting thought it is that God is for us. I think it's a good thing to know if anybody is for us. Remember the old song by the award-winning musician James Taylor? Ain't it good to know you got a friend? It is indeed. It makes a tremendous difference to know that we have somebody who believes in us, somebody who's pulling for us, somebody who's on our side. Maybe they're up in the grandstands cheering. Maybe they're at home praying. Maybe they're on the phone with you in your college dorm room. But you know that these are people who care very much about you, and they want the very best for you. Sometimes there seems to be so much going against us in our world today, doesn't it? That there's so much that we have to fight against and do something to correct. So much that we could fear. What a wonderful thing it is to know that you have parents who are for you, other family members who are for you, good friends who are for you, fellow church members for you. But there's a limit to what people can do, isn't there? Even a great wife or a great husband has their limit. Even the very best friend that you have in the world has their limit in what they can do to help us. Maybe they live too far away. Maybe they lack the resources to give us the help that we need at a particular time. Maybe they've been taken from us in death. There could be 100 reasons or more why somebody isn't able to help us. But if we could know that God is for us, and that we ultimately, utterly matter to him and that he is ready and able and willing to help us, wouldn't that be the greatest comfort of all for our lives? Paul throws out this question: if God is for us, who can be against us? Paul knows that there are plenty of possible answers to that question. As a leading Pharisee of the Jews, Saul, as he was known before he was converted, and his name was changed to Paul, was hated by the Romans. And later, as a persecutor of Christians, Paul was hated and feared by the early followers of Jesus. And then still later, after his conversion, Paul was hated by the Jews, ironically. Paul knew that there was no shortage of people or circumstances or evil powers that might come against us. The question really is this, though. If God is on our side, who, that makes any difference, can be against us? Who is there that can really do any harm to us? The answer to that question is no one. No one. When I was growing up, there was an older kid in my neighborhood that was kind of a hero to me. He was a big, burly kid. Reddish, curly hair, lots of freckles, had a round, chubby face, and he was built like a brick house. He was over 6 foot tall, if I remember right, in 6th grade. He was just a moose of a kid, and so we teasingly nicknamed him Moose. Moose's heart was as big as all outdoors, and on the inside, he was just a teddy bear. In every sport or game that we played, we all wanted to be on Moose's team. If Moose was carrying the ball when we were playing sandlot football, a whole gang of scrawny kids like me, and I was scrawny at that point in time, we couldn't bring him down. So if Moose was on my team, I knew that even if the whole rest of the neighborhood was on the other team, I was going to win. You couldn't bring him down. You get the analogy here. Of course, as time went by, things changed. We all got bigger, and Moose kind of lost some of that chubbiness and thinned down. And things changed, as they always do. He wasn't the one-man wrecking crew that he was in 6th grade. But friends, listen. If God is for us, that will never change. Because God cannot change. Cannot. It would be contrary to his eternal nature. Yesterday, today, forever, he's the same. When God is in our corner, even as the years pass, even as circumstances change, even as the world changes around us, he's the same. We can count on him. And friends, that's security, like the world doesn't know. And that's victory. We're more than conquerors through him who loves us. Now, someone might object, well, how can you really know that God is on your side? Isn't that colossal egotism or wishful thinking? I mean, come on, who are you to think that God has your personal interest on his heart, or that he's looking after you personally? You're just kidding yourself. Somebody else might chime in with this line of thinking. It seems to me that we can make a stronger argument for God being against us. I mean, look at all the problems in the world. You know, we lose loved ones and friends, and we have all these adversities against us. We have prayers that go unanswered. Isn't the world full of God's judgments against us? How can you possibly think that God is smiling down on you? Well, the Apostle Paul answers that question this way. He did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all. I wouldn't be surprised if the Apostle Paul was thinking about remembering that Old Testament story of Abraham and Isaac when he penned these words. Remember that story? God gave the patriarch, Father Abraham, this shocking command to take his son Isaac, the only son, the miracle son, right, of he and Sarah, and take him up onto Mount Moriah and kill him as a burnt offering, as a sacrifice to God. And Abraham was going to go through with it. He went so far as to bind the boy with ropes, set him on an altar piled up with wood, and to lift the knife to slay his son. And just in the nick of time, God stops him, halts him with his voice from heaven, and shows him a ram who's caught in a thicket nearby, who can become the sacrifice, the burnt offering instead. Can you imagine Abraham's relief and his joy when his only son is spared? That Old Testament story of Abraham and Isaac became a clue to God's dealings with the world later on. God also had an only son. We could call him the miracle child for sure. And because of the sinfulness and the rebellion and the disobedience of his human creation, God decides to send his only son into the world to be a sacrifice, to satisfy the wrath of God for sin. But this time, in the midst of the sacrifice, there's no halting voice from heaven. There's no ram caught in a thicket nearby. When the Son of God was about to be put to death, no one intervened. And there's an old song that says he could have called 10,000 angels, but Jesus didn't do that. And even if he did, we believe that because of the mission of God to redeem us, God would not have sent those angels. So Jesus Christ hung upon the cross until he was dead, literally dead. And Almighty God did what he stopped Abraham from doing centuries before. He gave his only son to death. He gave him for sinful people like me and you. And that, friends, is the supreme proof of God's love. That's what we remember and we celebrate when we gather around this communion table, that God's desire to save was so measureless that he gave the greatest possible gift, the gift of himself, at infinite cost. That proves that God is for us. That demonstrates the length and the breadth and the height and the depth that of the love of God for you and for me. And it gives us the highest hope imaginable. Now keep listening, because the best is yet to come. Paul goes on, throws out one more great question in this text. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? There's an irresistible logic at work here. It's what philosophers call an argument from the greater to the lesser. God has already given his people the greatest possible gift that he could give, the gift of himself. Given that fact, is there any other gift that he would withhold from us? Let me use this human analogy. I met a man 8 or 9 years ago who told me that he was going to give up one of his kidneys for his brother, whose kidneys were failing to function. That's quite a gift, isn't it? It involves risking your own life or risking the quality of your future, for sure, for the sake of someone else's life and their future. Now, if that same brother who needed the kidney later on needs, let's say, $50 for anti-rejection medication, Do you think that the brother who donated one of his kidneys is going to turn him down? No way. You see, the gift of the kidney was the pledge that he was ready and willing to do anything to ensure his brother's life. He's not going to discard that for a measly $50. And God didn't hesitate, friends, to put everything on the line for us. So is there anything else that he wouldn't gladly do for us? I want you to think for a moment about what it is God is going to give his children. We don't think about this enough, I don't think. Paul asks, now that God has given us his only son, what can we expect to receive? And he unhesitatingly answers the question, all things. All things. What does that mean? Some pastors and commentators say, well, it means every spiritual blessing. It means everything that we need for our salvation. Now, that's true, and that's wonderful beyond words in itself. But I believe that Paul is saying more than that. I'd like to have us turn to a passage in 1 Corinthians 3. Would you open your Bible to this passage? 1 Corinthians 3, 21 to 23. Let's see what Paul says in the next letter in the New Testament. Page 1775. Verse 21, so then, no more boasting about men. All things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or the present or the future, all are yours, and you are of Christ, and Christ is of God. Paul might have been thinking about some words that Jesus spoke to his disciples once. Jesus said this, fear not, little flock, term of endearment, for it is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. So get this, God has this whole universe, this entire kingdom, and it is his delight, it is his pleasure to give it to his children. Who else would he give it to? He's a loving Father. And if you think that I'm exaggerating here or saying more than what the Scripture intends to say, let me give you some other references that validate what I think Jesus and Paul are saying. I'll just put the references on the screen. If you want to jot these down, you can look them up later, but let me read these verses for you. First of all, Luke 22:29. Jesus said, I confer on you a kingdom, just as my Father conferred one on me, so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom and sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. 1 Corinthians 6:2 and 3. Do you not know that the saints will judge the world? And if you are to judge the world, are you not competent to judge trivial cases? Do you not know that we will judge angels? That's going to be interesting. Luke 19:17. Well done, my good and faithful servant, the master replied. Because you have been trustworthy in a very small matter, take charge of 10 cities. Whoa, not a neighborhood, not a city, 10 cities. Revelation 20, verse 6. Blessed and holy are those who have part in the first resurrection. The second death has no power over them, but they will be priests of God and of Christ and will reign with him for 1,000 years. There's many more. It's just a sampling. Look around at this lovely earth. Now I know that some of you despise this harsh winter weather. But I hope that just for a moment you can set the inconvenience of that aside and you can see the beauty of the snow and the ice. Okay, well, maybe not the ice. No. You can see the beauty of it. And if that's too challenging, then let's back up and let's take a drive up north in our minds and see the shimmering lakes and the woodlands adorned in autumn splendor. Glorious. Or maybe we need to back it up a little farther to summer, mentally. And we can see the vast array of flowers and the fields, and we can see the animals and the birds of the air. Friend, you may not believe that you hold legal title to all of this now, but one day you will. One day you will. All things are yours in Christ, Paul says. So scan the vast expanse of the oceans, teeming with fish and life of every kind. Look at the endless meadows and the gorgeous valleys and the staggering mountains. Look up on a clear summer night, up at the sky, and see the planets and all the countless stars circling in galaxy after galaxy. It's all yours because you're a child of Christ. Do you believe that? You should. And when you believe that, it should change your whole outlook. It will change how you look at the creation, but it should also change how you look at yourself. You're looking for some self-esteem? Yeah, you can find it here. You won't be like a renter who doesn't care about the house they live in because it's not theirs. Friends, one day, all of this world is going to be ours. So we should want to take care of it, right? We should determine to be as good stewards of this earth as we possibly can. Now, believing this truth does something else for us too. It helps us to relax from any feverish scrambling to get more stuff. Certainly the Christmas season, but even this post-Christmas season, as I've observed the busyness of the stores, all the exchanges and whatnot, but it is a time when there's just a lot of scrambling and rushing in the stores for people to purchase more and find great deals. The January white sales or whatever they're called. There's always a reason for a sale, it seems like. People accumulating their worldly goods. We can easily meet this request of the mission team for stuff in the house over there, can't we? I think so. You know what, as God's children, we never need to get caught up in this feverish scrambling for more. We can afford to wait. Paul says in this chapter, in verse 25, a little bit before where we started reading, if we hope for what we do not yet have, we wait for it patiently. The Bible says that we can be content with what we have. Are we? We can hold on to what we have with a loose grasp, and we can share what we have with those who have need, like missionaries. And we do all of that, friends, because we can wait, because all things are ours in Christ. Now, in verse 17 of this chapter, this is a great chapter in the Bible, Paul says, now, if we are God's children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, that we may share in his glory. Get a hold of that verse. I don't know about you, but it absolutely blows my mind to think that I am an heir of God to all that is. And I'm a co-heir, a joint heir with Jesus. As we travel this sod, and we'll sing that chorus to close the service today. So as we move into this new year, this coming year, let me urge you to cherish Jesus Christ as your highest treasure. Don't let anything else be your treasure. And cherish the Word of God as your best teacher. It seems to me that it's very easy for us to cherish the things of this world. It's so easy. But they're passing away, aren't they? As the old saying goes, there's no U-Hauls behind the hearse. They don't last. My mother used to say, this favorite saying wasn't original to her by any means, only one thing will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. The things that last, friends, are the things that we do to invest ourselves in the kingdom of God and in bringing others to know him and to be a part of that kingdom. That's what we need to be committed to as a church family. in 2018. Let's bow our heads in prayer.